Now, I was going to be at the Robin's Nest event, but I was down at the beach yesterday watching the helicopters land. Or not. No, we were standing, and when the helicopter crashed, a man who was right next to me started screaming and crying. And it turned out that he was the pilot's father. And so he was watching his son after that crash. And then behind us was a woman who was crying, and her husband had been the pilot of the police helicopter that had gone down, and he had died. And so what had been a festive atmosphere, because they were doing some aeronautic tricks and other things to show us the capacity of the helicopters, immediately turned into kind of just a scene of pandemonium and terror and fear. And of course, the fear is that in the very controlled, maintained environment that had been created, chaos had arrived, and with chaos, the potential of death. In that initial moment when people wondered, oh my gosh, are they dead? And not just them, but the people on the ground who had been injured in the crash. And that immediate moment from our orderly world, our maintained world, and we're living our lives and things are going along, to all of a sudden they're not. And that chaos and the potential even for the power of death is always in the background of human activity. And it's not just always in the background of human activity, but it's always in the background of the Bible's view of the world, that somehow what God is trying to maintain creation is in this environment of chaos and this appearance of death. Like in these two stories we have, one about Naaman, the Syrian general, and one about these 10 lepers, even though it says they had a skin condition, which is maybe a more accurate sense. The Bible has a broader set of skin afflictions than just leprosy, but of course leprosy is sort of the predominant, most spectacular of those. If you have psoriasis and the guy next to you has leprosy, people are going to say leprosy first. But why is that system exists where people are exempted from the worship of the temple, and what were they even doing in the temple? Why were they sacrificing all these animals? And there's a good argument that if you look at the entire apparatus of pure, impure, tabernacle, temple, worship, sacrifice, blood, cleansing, that what they're really trying to do is keep away these forces of chaos and these forces of death, the power of death. And that they have this enormously elaborate sacrificial system whereby they're able to do this. And it's something that God commands, because God is trying to keep the community alive and fully alive. But that's why they don't touch dead bodies, and that's why they have issues with blood, and that's why so many of the things that are an anxiety in the Bible, underneath it is, how do we keep death at bay in the valley of the shadow of death? And really that sense of a shadow is something that comes over us. And in the midst of that, we experience a kind of cold darkness, and we wonder what's going to happen. And how is it that we resist? You look at our current society, and oftentimes we keep all of this power at bay, or we want to have it happen somewhere else. We have enormous institutions of amusement that kind of keep away chaos and death, like if you've ever gone to Disneyland, for example, or Knott's Berry Farm, or Medieval Times, or the Pirate Dinner Adventure, or all these different ways that we kind of focus our attention in a sense of distraction, which isn't bad necessarily, but it also is keeping us from having to face the abyss, as one person called it. This is why I think last week the disciples were saying to Jesus, we need more faith. How are we supposed to do all this unless we have more faith? And then in the reading from that Jean read from Naaman, the Syrian general, he says, can't we get a better river? Our river's too small. It's like that famous line in the movie Jaws when they say, I think we're going to need a bigger boat. People go bigger, they go better, they go stronger, because how are we going to resist the storm? And that's what makes that story of Naaman so interesting, because Naaman is a very powerful person. But he also goes to show that even powerful people are afflicted. Now, there are certain things that, depending on your state of life and your influences and your connections and your resources, you don't have to experience the hardship of other people. But then there are other things, no matter how rich, powerful, and interesting you are, you have the same potential problems as everyone else, particularly these afflictions of skin, or these afflictions of genetics, or afflictions that no one asked you if you wanted that, but it happened. And then all of a sudden, even with all of his martial might, even with all of his influence and power, he can't stop something growing on his body. Now, as I mentioned to you, the Bible, this might be getting too deep into the weeds, but the Bible, we love going into the weeds, but the Bible That's where they found Moses, if you remember. Not that we want to find a baby today, because that'll be a lot, but the Bible has this larger sort of bundle of skin afflictions, but they all kind of came to mean leprosy. And leprosy got introduced through Alexander the Great when he went to India, and he brought it with him when his troops came back and were fighting after he died. And the interesting thing about leprosy is we oftentimes, especially as children, I remember, would imagine that your body just starts falling apart. But it's not really what happens. Like leprosy, it is a form of neuropathy. So any of you that have neuropathy, like if you're diabetic, or sometimes as we age in our feet and our hands, we just don't feel. So we end up injuring our feet, our legs, different parts of our body, because we just can't feel when they're getting injured, because we just can't feel them. Or driving becomes very difficult because we just can't feel putting pressure on the gas pedal and the brake pedal and all of that stuff. And so this spiritual neuropathy is a problem where we have all the body parts, we just aren't sensitive to the presence. And this is something that happens in our spiritual life. God is with us, God is near us, and we aren't necessarily sensitive to God's presence. And so here this man is starting to be disconnected from being able to fully participate in the world in which he lives. He can't feel it the same. And the person who preaches the gospel to him is a hostage. Like we think about what's happening in Gaza and Israel, with hopefully there's peace. But this idea of hostages being returned, she's one of those hostages. But now she was taken in battle, and she's not complaining to them. She's telling him, where I'm from, there's someone that could help you. If you went to where I'm from, we could heal you. And how desperate must he be that they're finally listening to the slaves? And if you know anyone who has a chronic illness who's tried every possible medication, when you get desperate enough, you'll go anywhere and do anything. You go, where's that person? Oh, they're down in Mexico, or they're in Germany, or they're trying something in the Philippines, or they got something they ordered online. I don't know. I don't even know where they got it from, but someone's mailing it to their house. People who are desperate for healing. And the fact that she's going to be the one bringing this word of life, it shows how desperate they are. He goes, okay, we'll go and try your prophet. And it goes to show, too, that the king has kind of a hollow crown, because the king goes, I can't do that. I'm just the king. I'm just trying to collect taxes and resist the Assyrian army, and now they wonder if this is a diplomatic trap. But it's not, because there is a word of life that is stronger than the power of death. There is a light that is stronger than this darkness. There is a fullness that is stronger than the emptiness of the grave. And this is exactly what the prophet is offering. And he offers it through a word. He doesn't come and visit. You'll notice Naaman complains. He goes, wasn't he going to come out and just do this, or wave his hand like this, or do this, like the electricity in Star Wars? Wasn't he just going to zap it? Shouldn't there have been something spectacular? And he wants me to just go wash myself in some small pool of water. This isn't enough for the chaos and death that we are facing. Isn't there a better river? I could have done this at home. And then they go, well, if he had told you to do something hard, you would have done it. If he had sent you on a quest, you would have done it. All he said was, go and be washed. And this is the same thing you hear as Christians. We look at the forces of chaos. We look at the forces of death. We hear a father crying and screaming the name of his son. We hear a wife remembering her husband. And we say, certainly, the answer is going to be something difficult, because this is a difficult problem. And Jesus has told us the same thing. Go and wash. Go and be washed. Go and be washed in the waters of baptism. We go, that's it? It's not even very much water. Shouldn't it be more water? Don't we need something more spectacular? Is the pastor going to shoot lightning out of his fingers to make me know that God is with me? And the answer is no. All you're going to get is a word. All you're going to get is water. But you're going to realize that this is real. What we're talking about with God is real. That's what's so interesting when Jesus heals these 10 lepers, traditionally these 10 lepers, and only one comes back. He tells them to go to the priest to externally verify his word of healing, that's part of them participating in their community. But they need to realize that what's happening in that temple or what's happening in this church is pointing to reality much bigger than us that's real. It's not just go and, all right, return to the temple and just go back to work and life without any possibility. It's go and meet God. Go and be connected to God. And in a world where people say we need more faith, we need bigger rivers, we need more power, the one thing that God will offer us is a word, and this word is a word of mercy. Notice the lepers didn't go, please give me some antibiotics. Please give me some ointment. Please give me something to soothe. Please give me a narcotic so I can just be out of here. Just give me something. They say, have mercy on us. Show us your mercy. And this is God's answer. When God says, go and wash, this is God showing us mercy. This is God feeding us with mercy. When you come up to this altar, you are being fed with mercy, which is medicine for the healing of the nations. God's mercy and God's forgiveness is not merely just a declaration, though it's that too, but it's also something that begins to transform you and heal you and restore spiritual neuropathy, making us more sensitive, more aware. Like after the helicopter crashed, I was supposed to be volunteering for something down at the beach, and everything was in chaos. So I just walked down to the pier and was sitting in the shade. And this guy starts talking to me, and I thought, oh, there's only two of us here, and he's talking to me, you know. And then at first I thought, and then it turned out he was a little drunk, you know. But he was a young guy, and he was talking to me about how he had taken his bus down from Orange for 3 hours, and he wanted to become a cook, and he was going to go to OCC and get his schooling. And then I said to myself, God, are you asking me to connect with him, encourage him? And it was this moment, hopefully, of some spiritual sensitivity to say, is this actually a calling for me right now, rather than an annoyance? So I thought, okay, I'll engage with you. And I started listening to him, and then he kept apologizing. He goes, I know I'm talking to you a lot, bro. I know I'm talking to you a lot. It's just I'm a little tipsy right now. And I go, it's okay. But at the end of it, I told him, I said, you should go to school, go and finish your school. I go across the street and just ask for a job in the kitchen, because he wants to work in a restaurant in a kitchen. And I go, in a year from now, just remember that I grabbed your hand and I said, I believe in you. You can do this. And I just walked away. I go, now I have to leave, and I walk away. Because then I walked back to where we were supposed to meet. But it was one of these things where it could have just been an annoyance, like, look, I'm just sitting in the shade, please don't talk to me right now. But it could also be a possibility for communion, a possibility of offering someone a word of encouragement, the possibility of offering faith, because we're participating in something that's bigger than us and more real than we can imagine. And this is where I'll leave you. On Friday, Fumi and I went up to Claremont. There was a pastor who just died, and he went to Japan in 1951, and he stayed there until 1994. And he was the teacher of all of the pastors we work with in Japan. Every one of these pastors had him as a teacher. And the pastor who was there at that church actually was a missionary to Japan. So we had all these connections to the work that we do over there. And she got up at the sermon and she said, well, Pastor Dale told me what to preach on. He knew exactly what he wanted you to hear for his funeral. She goes, but what he didn't tell me is I'm going to tell you this story. As he was coming to the end of his life, he called me and said, I need to talk to you. And she said, I went to his bedside, and he said, I was praying last night. And I was just, and because he knew, the guy was 99 years old. He knew that he was coming to the end of his life. And he goes, I was praying, and I was surrounded by light. He goes, there was light everywhere. And a voice said to me, welcome. And he said, I knew that was God getting ready to call me. And he goes, I just wanted to tell you, because I'm not sure, you have to tell the pastor, because they have to believe you. Hopefully they'll believe you. But it's this idea that everything that was offered to Naaman, everything that was offered to these lepers is offered to you, is offered to us. This gift of mercy, this promise of life, this promise of light, something stronger than the chaos and the death. And if we think we need to go bigger, it's not bigger, it's much, much smaller. These moments of connectivity, these moments of mercy, these moments of being alive and trusting and living in trust, that this will be enough to go and wash, to go and eat, to live together and know that Christ crucified and resurrected has opened us a way to everlasting life. Amen.